If someone needs to Lucas lecture and is not on the list, like you can sign it as well. Okay, we'll be waiting here.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you all for being here after this long day and that you have still patience to listen a little bit of theory, which refers to what Luca was talking before, architectural theory of law. I call it ATL. And now we will focus on one segment of that theory, like functions of law as seen through ATL. I will have introduction, and after introduction I will talk about two stages that those who are searching for functions of the legal system have to go through. So it's axiomatic stage and methodological stage. As you will see later, there are two more stages for those that are searching for the functions of. Okay. Joseph Raz in 1979 has noticed that the concept of the functions of law is quite obviously of major importance to any theory of law which attempts a general explanation of the nature of law. So Joseph Raz thought that concept of functions is important to be elaborated to understand law. What happened later is that I think this degree of importance, because he said it is of major importance, I think that the degree of importance of this concept increased through the artifact theory of law, ATL. So it's not only, when you look on functions through ATL, it's not only that it is of major importance, but at least for some theorists on ATL, it is of essential importance. And this property of essential importance becomes obvious, as Raz would say in 1979. Today we can say it is quite obvious that it is of essential importance for ATL if we accept that the thesis of ATL, that law necessarily has a function. And I will return to this conclusion later. What is important, what was interesting for me, because there are lots of theorists who already written a lot about functions, and one of them is Ken Ehrenberg. He wrote a book, Functions of Law. So it's hard to add anything to what was already written there. But what was interesting, what was my interest in this topic was that that some theories appear which follow these thesis on essential importance of the functions for the law. For example, you have the picture of Ken Hima here. He said that the function of law is peace. Then you have Miodrag Jovanovic, and he said that the function of law is justice. And then again you have Ken Ehrenberg, who didn't say anything about these concrete functions like justice, peace, but he stayed like safe on the safe ground, saying that the function of law is regulation of behavior. So my point was, let's see for those who are searching for the functions of law, to which sequences and what is the way they have to go through to say at the end of the day, this is the function of law, peace is the function of law, or justice is the function. What are the stages to arrive at the end of this conclusion? That's why I presented this search by using the picture of route plan. If you're going to, from here, to find the Café Buja, which means hall, and it is in the old city, it's very good cafe for drinking cocktails, and you can see the beaches and everything, see, beautiful. So if you want to go there, you will use your mobile phones and route planner to let you there. So how to find a good route planner? I think that a good route planner for explaining those who are searching for the functions of law should make visible different stages of search, challenges on the road, and different views of those that are walking on this road. My proposal is also that we could see the sequences as described as following. So we have axiomatic stage, methodological stage, classificatory stage, and at the end, analytical stage. Analytical stage, this stage you analyze the concrete proposal for the function. So you analyze if he claims that peace is the function of law, then we analyze his claim. But before that, we have to go through other sequences. And today, I'm going to talk about two of them, axiomatic and methodological stage. So in axiomatic stage, we will face with one problem for those who are searching for the functions of law. And I'm not claiming that every theorist is searching for the function of law. I don't know what is your opinion about that. Does law has any function? So in the first stage, the problem is can we claim that an artifact, and we will see that we claim that law is an artifact, can we claim that this artifact or any other really has a function? How can we be sure that an artifact, especially something like law, really has a function at all? Then also in this axiomatic stage, the problem is about the concept of functions, because as you will see, when we say function, what do we mean by function? So there are some different meanings of this term. On methodological stage, we will face with the so-called contingency problem. I will just talk a little bit on the problem of contingency here. So there are two meanings of contingency. If anyone of you knows what the contingency means for you, contingency.
So it means not necessary.
This is the first meaning of contingency. I think maybe you can correct me. It's like Karl Popper. He was talking about that, maybe even before. But I found the interesting point of entrance through Karl Popper, his difference between what is empirical statement, okay, the outside it's knowing, and we can check that. So it is contingent proposition and depends on the facts outside of us. And you have these logical propositions which are true by themselves. Okay, this is one meaning of the contingency. The other meaning of the contingency that I found interesting is of Richard Rorty, his book on irony, contingency, and solidarity, and he said that contingency is an impossibility to step outside the various vocabularies we have employed, so to understand each other, to discuss a topic. It is impossible to step out of our vocabularies and to find the meta vocabulary which somehow takes account of all possible vocabularies, all possible ways of judging and feeling. So for Rorty, contingency is impossibility to have one meta language so that we can all understand each other on a topic. Okay, after this introduction, I will go to this first stage, and the first stage is axiological, as we mentioned, and it deals with the relation between artifacts and law, artifacts and functions, and law and functions. So here are the propositions. The first one is that every artifact has a function. The second one is that law is an artifact, and I think that Luca before, in the class before, I don't know in which direction he goes, but he's one of the theorist who is introducing this old idea in different way that law is an artifact. So law is an artifact, and all artifacts, every artifact has a function, so law has a function. Regarding this first thesis that artifacts has functions, there are many of philosophers of artifacts who propose this kind of claim, and some of them are Lee Luther Baker and Jesse Hughes. So, for example, you can find propositions like the nature of an artifact lies in its proper function, or one of the defining characteristics of artifacts is that they have functions. They are for something. So if you take one artifact, for example, a car, I guess that all of us will agree that it is for something. Yeah? So the question is, what is for? What is it for? But in this first thesis, which seems like very obvious that things that are produced by humans are for something, is questioned in the philosophy of artifacts. So there are many philosophers who challenge this thesis. So if you claim that all legal systems have a function, then in case that you find a legal system that does not have a function, your thesis is basically wrong. So what are the problems with the thesis that all functions, all artifacts have a function? And I'm presenting these because I'm not claiming anything about this. So I'm just, as I said at the beginning, it's easier position. I'm just like illustrating the rules and sequences that anyone who wants to find the function at the end has to go through. So this is the first stage. And there are some problems with the claim that that artifacts have a function. One of the famous examples to challenge this is banana in the museum. So I don't know if you read about the price of this banana. It's like, I don't know, 20,000 euros, something like that. So you are in the museum and you have the banana on the wall. So someone will say, "This is art. Look how beautiful is this. This is," and I don't know, people will come, ordinary people will come to the museum and say, "Oh, this is nothing. This is banana." So is it really that all artifacts has a function? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that this example, for this example, you can claim that even this example has, for this example, you can claim that it has a function? Banana on the wall of the museum.
Yeah, sure. It's an art, and its function could be, for instance, to be viewed by people at the exhibition or something like that.
Yep. And anyone else?
Also, there's like some conceptual, I guess, function. So this is like not only banana, but it's the concept that it's involved, the way it's presented. So I think that's what sells it. Not necessarily, the truth that costs to writing the neurosense process.
Yep.
Yes, but I would say that of course there could be some functions assumed by us as interpreters of it, but I'm not sure if there is a possibility to identify any function fixed with this piece of art. So this was also a problem with the lecture. So Luca, that that he's said about the functions of law, but he hadn't said anything about specific functions. What are those functions? And he used an example of art, and in my opinion, this example is very hard because in art you can say about many functions, but you cannot, in my opinion, identify any specific fixed function which for sure is the function of this work.
Okay, now we have the discussion on this example. Thank you for all these good arguments. And I'm not going to be involved in this discussion, but I will use just one of the arguments that Ken Ehrenberg did in his book Functions of Law. He said, okay, we will not discuss that, but we can say the following thing important for the law: at least public artifacts, not being primarily artistic, have a function, full stop. So we could say that we have solved the problem, and we could travel and to our cafe bourgeois where the functions are waiting for us. So the first problem we solved. Okay. The second problem. Oh, Harry Potter is here. So the second problem is the problem of phantom functions. And also, this is not my example, it's just to say. So in the philosophy of law, you have the problem of phantom functions. What are the phantom functions in the philosophy of artifacts of law? So what we have as the first picture, these are the magic wands. So if you have the magic wand, you can move yourself to the bourgeois immediately. Or if you have feng shui mirrors, if you have one at your home, it's a good thing to have because I don't know, feng shui mirrors, they bring luck to your home and moves all bad energy from out your home. So this is good mirror to have and to look into in the morning, every morning in the feng shui mirror. And on the third picture, you have the island of Lokrum, which is a very nice island near Dubrovnik. It's a little bit expensive to go there, but if you have a possibility to go there, I would strongly recommend that. It's a beautiful island, and you will find lots of bunnies there, or rabbits. And you know that rabbit's feet bring good luck. So all of these are basically phantom functions because you have a real thing for something, I don't know, stick for music, other people, and they're said to have some other functions which are not real, if you agree with me. I don't know, maybe some of you would claim that these things really exist. Or voodoo dolls to also that they are functioning. The problem, what do you think about it? How to resolve this problem of phantom function? Because this reflects our research. Because if there are some artifacts that have not real functions but phantom functions, maybe it is also case for the law. Maybe it's that we claim that it is peace or justice, but this is just a phantom function. How can we know that? So what do you think about phantom functions problem? How to resolve this then? How to go further?
I think one should be open to the possibility that law has a phantom function. Like, for instance, certain leftist criticisms of law are such that, it claims that it's meant to preserve justice, whereas its actual function is to perpetuate certain power.
Yeah, of course.
So maybe you can distinguish between perverted functions and good functions.
Good. This is the argument I have. So the problem could be resolved by distinguishing what the thing is really constructed for, example, toy for amusement, from what they represent in the use, for example, magic wands. So the problem remains in in this, if this distinction is not possible. I found one example just for discussion. I don't know, is it the movie Bounty, or what is the name of the movie where you have the bad luck sailor on the ship. And this is also one of phantom functions. So if you have bad luck sailor on your ship on the ship will not have luck, you know, the catastrophe will happen, then you have to throw away this bad luck sailor to save the ship. So it's not something that, you know, like Harry Potter, like a story that we don't believe, but in the time when this function appears, that people think this is the real, this is happening. You know, there are some bad luck sailors. You have to move them away from the ocean. And especially this bad luck sailor thinks to that norm. If I'm bad luck sailor, I have to move, you know, go to the sea to swim and lead the ship. I believe in that. So how can you distinguish them if you have the non-creator and non-user? How can you distinguish this? What is it for, and from what they believe it is for? So there could be some problems in these cases, and at least what I found as interesting examples. But okay, let's say that even if there is something irrational in legal institutions, because legal institutions can be claimed to be rational, like for example marriage is it a rational institution, so irrational institution. So even if we come to the point that we could say that legal institutions are, at least some, are irrational, this does not mean that legal system as a whole is irrational. Or this could be one argument to move from this track. Or we could also say, okay, but at the end of the story, because we have 2 stages more, we come to the function of law and says peace is the function of law. So at the end we found out, okay, but this is phantom functions. Okay, maybe, but still, if the result is irrational, our search for the result is not irrational. It could be irrational thing to do. So it is possible that we could say that we could continue with our search. Okay. In this chapter, or this part of the sequence, this is still axiological stage. We have another group of questions and problems, and these refer to what is the function, what function means. What do you say? What is the function of something? How to define the function of the car?
Something is abused someone or some group or some individual. And it's also with that mindset it's used.
But does it have to be used? Can we say that the car has a function even if it does not produce any effects in the real life, but still has a function?
Like car museum or something.
Yeah.
But then that is kind of parasitical definition. So it can only be car if there's kind of a broader concept of car, which is outside of the museum, for example.
Other opinions? Okay. What you can find in literature, so this is not again time claiming, and this is easy position because I'm describing what others are talking about. So, okay, we can find these classification I already mentioned. You have real functions and phantom functions. This was already mentioned. Then there are some who claims that the functions are the actual effects of the thing. The actual effects that the thing is producing. And the other are talking, no, you should not go in that way. You should look on the function as the point or as the purpose of a thing. What is the purpose of the law, even if it does not produce that effect, which is the point of the law? And interesting, and I think that someone mentioned that, very interesting thing for searching the functions is the difference between final purposes or effects, whatever you choose, and abstractly defined outputs serving different purposes or effects. I will stay with this third distinction. So, for example, on the first picture, you have the computer in the Ministry of Justice. And this computer, the purpose, we could say, they use them in this Ministry of Justice, people use them to detect current local criminals. And on the second picture, you have the computer in the Holocaust Museum. And I don't know if you have been in some of these museums, but you have computers which tell you the story about past war crimes. So the purpose of that computer in the Holocaust Museum is to remind visitors on the past war crimes or on the past war criminals, even better. So when you look at these two computers, you could say the function of both is to suppress undesirable behavior. If the function is to suppress undesirable behavior, although the first one deals with the current criminals, and in the second, in the museum, it is for reminding us that the criminals are around us, that this could happen, that war crimes can happen. But then someone can come and say that the function of the computer is to process information. And at the end, what is the function of this aspect? So if you are searching for some more concrete, I would say, more specific functions, law, the function of law is peace, the function of law is justice. This is one way. Or you can stay with abstract output that serves in multiple ways. So maybe the right way to talk about functions in law is to talk about them in an abstract way, not in concrete way, because it's easier at the end of the day to speak about law. The function of law is to produce norm-multiplied norms. We didn't say anything specific for that. What is interesting here that you have operational or structural functions. So you have the function of the computer to produce, to process information. You have operative functions of the law to produce norms and to apply norms. And then you have specific functions of the computer, specific function to deliver information about the criminal existing, or to deliver information about past crimes, or to deliver peace, or to deliver justice, or whatever else. Pavel, are we going to have a break, or how is it?
No, actually, you are running at some break.
Okay. So let's say that we could continue with our search after these challenges for our search, for those who are searching for functions. If you remember, the first thesis was that artifacts have a function, and the second thesis was that law is artifact. So I will not talk about this thesis that law is an artifact. I guess that the author of the editor of the book, Luca Burazzi, has explained why he thinks that the law is an artifact. But for this story, it is interesting another thing, because in his book there are some authors like Schauer who says the most important thing about claiming that law is an artifact is their contingency. That different cultures may have different concepts of law. So to say that law is an artifact also implies contingency. If artifact is produced by humans, most probably in different cultures, they will produce different laws, different legal systems. So on one side, we are claiming that law has a function, and on the other side, some of those who are involved in the ATL are claiming that the content of the law is contingent. It can be whatever. What is the law? Whatever the people think the law is. So this brings us to the second section. We are going now to methodological stage, but still involved in this first stage. We are talking about the conflict of essentialism and conventionalism. And some theorists claims that this is not a real problem, because the problem is that people who see this conflict see that that does not distinguish basically two concepts of law, the one analytical and the second one the folk concept of law. So maybe this conflict can be resolved if we analyze what is analytical concept of law and what is the folk concept of law. So this is introduction to this second sequence on the root planar in ITL mode. So we are talking about methodology. Okay, so the conflict between essentialism and conventionalism appears only if essentialism is understood as the position that law has necessary minimum content independently of what those subjected to law consider to be law. And conventionalism in this conflict is understood as the position that law is any social practice recognized as law by those subjected to the law. Whatever the folk thinks the law is, that is law. And essentialism, they're claiming there is something minimum in every legal system that should be there independently of what people think about it. So for now, let's go to these concepts, analytical concept, and how can we see analytical concept and folk concept. Analytical concept is focused on identification of the minimum content of law. Why is that so? Because if we agree that law is consisted of norms, so it's obviously that if you are saying that there is a function of law, then there should be a norm which refers to this function. If the function of law to produce norms, there should be a norm in the legal system that says how the legal norms could or should be produced. If you says that the function of law is to apply norms, then you have to have norms who says who can apply norms, in which way to apply them. If you said that the function of law is to be coercive, you have to have norms in the legal system which says when the coercion could or should be applied. If you said that the function of law is peace, you have to have in the law as the system of norms some norms which are saying something about peace. So if in this analytical concept we are searching for the minimum content of law, and the content is norms, so norms about something. Who uses these analytical concepts? First, we could say that the theorists are producing analytical concepts. So if you want to understand something, the theorists will make a theory about that, what we are looking around ourselves. So they will say this thing has these properties. So this is the theory on COVID. So someone will produce this theory, and in law, the people who produce this kind of concepts are legal theorists. But also I claim that judges and legal scientists, when thinking about the features of law as theoretical propositions, at least in some cases can influence their own practices. The concept of functions can influence their own practices. To come to the solution of these two problems, we could make a distinction between weak and strong essentialism. So I will again return to Karl Popper because he used the word methodological essentialism. Basically, this strong essentialism means that some things exist independently of any social practice. So these are ideas, Platonic ideas around us. So no one has to believe in them, they will still exist. The weak essentialism can be explained in the following way. If we want to understand what is happening around us, for example, with COVID and these things, we could make some theories. And what we are doing is exactly that we are not discovering something that exists somewhere about COVID, and we are discovering now the truth. But we are making the concepts about the COVID. So sometimes the scientists say, in the summertime, COVID will disappear. And then the other scientists would say, no, it is still here, but we cannot see the COVID. It's around us, but we cannot see it. I don't know why during the summertime in Dubrovnik there are not so many cases of COVID. Because the year before and this year something is happening, or I don't know, maybe the information are wrong, but it's obviously that we could say something about this situation. So the weak essentialism is stipulating something about it. It's not that I as a theorist about COVID claim this is the truth, but I could try to say that maybe the warm time influenced the COVID. This is stipulation about COVID, which exists somewhere. So in the weak essentialism, we stipulate some content to concepts. The second thing about analytical concepts is to see what we are talking about, especially regarding the law. Are we talking about the local phenomena or translocal phenomena? Are we talking about the artifact in Croatian society, or artifact in Polish society, or artifact in, I don't know, China's society? Or we are talking about that artifact in all societies? So it's translocal. Of course, very famous distinction important for those who are trying to make the concepts, theories of what is going on about the law, for example, is that they can use inductive and deductive methods. It's an old story. So inductive methods, you will search, for example, if you are a comparative constitutional law scholar and you want to say something about legal orders in the world, you will say there are 193 legal orders in the world, and you will explore each of these 193 legal orders, and you will say the following. I found out that 191 orders contain the norms on protecting the specific list of rights. So 191 legal orders of the world have the Bill of Rights. 2 of them does not have that. This is empirical fact. No? After you have all these systems in the room and then explore them, you will find this. Then you could find out that 177 orders contain the norms on judicial review. Of 193, empirical fact is that if you research them, that 177 legal orders in the world have the norms on judicial review. So this is the one way, inductive way to claim something about legal orders. The legal theorists could use this information but they could choose to go the opposite way, deductive way, to based on intuition or disinformation, they could provide some claims on law, but also using some concepts which are the characteristic of legal theory. For example, the property of norm. I'm not sure that comparative constitutional lawyers would use the concept of property of norm. But for us, legal theorists, this is interesting concept that we could see if we can use this concept together with this information to come to the concept of legal orders. And maybe we could find that at the end and say, legal theorists can say, in the world there are constitutionalized and deconstitutionalized legal orders. This is the deductive way to come to the conception of law. And when you have this conception, you can test it. And at the end, what seems important for these analytical concepts of law is, do they have only theoretical purposes, or they could have also practical purposes? For example, some theorists claim that legal theories does not have any practical purpose. Ken Kim, I would say that conceptual analysis is not aimed at producing any practical things. But maybe someone would like to produce a theory which could have practical purposes. Maybe it's possible to also have legal theories which have practical implications. And this could be claimed, for example, for legal system, and this could be claimed for legal institution. To explain how this could be, or attempted to show how theories could have practical implications regarding the legal system, it will take lots of time. We will not discuss that here, but we could try to see, for example, it's easy to see how legal conceptions can have practical implications for legal institutions. For example, what is the marriage in Poland? Or in Croatia, it is the same. Does anybody know what is the definition of marriage, legal definition of marriage in Poland or in Croatia? It's the same.
The relationship between man and
So in some particular legal orders, the marriage is defined as the relation between a man and woman. And we can, to simplify, because it can be more complicated, we could, for example, imagine that this definition of the legislature in Poland and in Croatia, or because in Croatia we had the referendum on this issue, that it corresponds to public opinion, whatever the public opinion is. So whatever the theorists, legal theorists say about that, no, this is not marriage, but still in Poland and in Croatia, there are no implications of if he claims no, the marriage is the relation between two subjects. In Poland and in Croatia, it would not have the effect of producing legal effects on property, on other things. But if you're involved, for example, in exploring trans-local phenomena, so to see what are the relations between humans that exist in different cultures, then maybe it is smart to start with or to explore abstract institution of marriage, not concrete marriage in Poland or in Croatia. This famous traveler in Croatia, and he falls in love, and he decides with his loving person to go in the world and to discover what is love. So he traveled around in different cultures, go to different cultures, spent lots of money for that, and at the end he produced a book and a movie about that. And he went to polygamy marriages, monogamy marriages, all kinds of marriages, and explored that. Do people feel love? And I think in Japan they don't know this word. What does it mean? Some societies they don't have this word, love. So following this way, if you are going to find what is the marriage, maybe on translocal view, maybe it's smart to start with abstract definition of marriage. So maybe, I don't know, some of you in this room could make probably better definition than this would be, but it could be defined as institution of marriage is the relation between subjects empowered by a particular legal system to establish such a relation through a specific process of performing the function of providing facilities for private arrangements between individuals and possibly redistribution of goods. So this is totally different of what is the marriage. Marriage is the relation between man and woman. So what this story has to do with the theory and practice? Well, of course, it depends on the legislator which definition of marriage he will adopt. What legal theories can do is to develop types of marriage corresponding to all instances of marriage found in different cultures, and in accordance to some criteria, maybe including functions of the marriage, and secondly, to develop models of marriage based on this categorization. So you as the scientists could do this exercise and produce to our Croatian Sabor or Parliament or Poland, to Parliament, you could provide to them, this is the analysis, this is what we found, this is marriage. Of course, at the end, it is up to the legislator will they adopt this or this definition of marriage. But still, the theory, I think, could be said that it can affect the practice. Now, this is what is important for the analytical concept. Now we're talking about the folk concept. I'm sure that you know about the folk concept. It's Frank Jackson, and he used that to refer to ordinary intuitions people like us have about the nature of things like law, and it is grounded in linguistic conventions. They use this term, and they have some conventions how to use these terms. And what is the conceptual analysis is to flesh these theories, ordinary people, and to make them more coherent theories. This is from Jackson. So here we could say that when we talk about folk concept, I always wonder, okay, but what folk concept? Ordinary citizens in the street, in Café Sesame, were sitting there. We ask them what is the law, or folk concept like still not legal theorists, okay, but who knows, maybe professionals, maybe legislature, maybe judges, maybe lawyers who initiate these processes. I think that it's better to use for this purpose the folk concept to cover all of them, not only ordinary people. But what is good with absolutely with the folk concept of law, this approach is that you have this gestalt switch, because legal theorists are in their rooms, and thinking about what is the law. And now let's make the shift. Let's see what people that we are trying to describe, whose languages we are trying to describe. Let's not be on meta level, but go on the level of their languages. Let's go to them and see what they think about what we produce as the theorists. So obviously the folk concept, what brings to us is that we are now focused on human mind, or like Alfros would say, consciousness of humans. And consciousness of humans, according to all process, consisted of beliefs and attitudes, or to make it easier, on cognition and interest. So assume that you have an interest in something, the cognition about that something could influence your action. Obviously, then it's important to have some concept in your mind on something that you're interested in. But of course, we're not claiming that it should exist in minds of all people. At least of some people, it is necessary to exist. For example, to return to Banana Museum, you have art producers and you have the public. And who knows what is the public? People from different cultures can come to that museum and be the public. So if the public reviews something is an artifact, the same artifact as those who produce it, so we have their consciousness and the consciousness of those who produce this artifact of banana in the museum. The second thing is that we have two groups of norm users, at least, as I said, those ordinary people and professionals, which can be professionals maintaining the legal system or professionals who activate the legal system. For example, lawyers. If you have your friends lawyers, it's good to test your thesis with lawyers because you'll be surprised what they have to say to your legal thesis about law. For example, this is important because it could happen that there is difference between professionals and citizens. If you ask judges and ordinary citizens sitting in Sesam, what is the source of the law? You would get, I bet, different answers to that question. The most people in Croatia thinks that the source of the law is only legislation. This is the source of the law. But judges, especially constitutional judges, they know that there are some other sources of law, like how to introduce some things in existing law, which already exists. Or if you ask, for example, ordinary people, what is discrimination? In Croatia, there are some surveys few years ago. They asked ordinary people, what is discrimination? They didn't know. What is discrimination? They don't know for that word. And for professionals who are dealing with discrimination, oh, they know exactly what is discrimination. Then with victim, I don't know if any one of you were a victim of crime. And then when you are ordinary man as a victim and appear in the courtroom, you would be surprised how they are looking on you, how the judge is looking on you. He's not looking at the victim as, oh my God, this is poor young man or poor young woman suffer the crime, suffer the pain. No, he does not see you sitting in front of him in that way because he is obliged not to see you in that way. So there are different views of those who are professionals, the concepts, different concepts of those who are professionals and those who are ordinary people. And of course, folk concept is important for contingent character of law. As I said at the beginning, with thesis that if you have an artifact, contingency is there because men produce that and different cultures will produce different laws. But let's see for the beginning, can we make some clarifications on these kind of things? It's one thing to claim that when you say law is contingent, it means in a way, when you say that, you mean that there are no concept of law. If there are no concept of law in the minds of people, artifact of law would not exist. This is one thing to say that law is contingent thing. So the contingency refers to the appearance of law, and it implies that law does not have to exist and might stop to exist. This is one thing, and it's easy to to work with that. The problem is with contingency thesis is when we talk about contingency of the content of the law. And then we have again two theses, weak contingency and strong contingency thesis. The weak contingency thesis, of course, none of us would claim that all the legal systems are the same, because they're not. There are different contents on the marriage, there are different contents of the property, there are different contents of this and that. But the weak contingency thesis will claim that there is a minimum content of law which is the same in all legal systems. Not all, but the minimum content. And this is the minimum content. If we connect that with the functions, then we will find the function of law. And strong contingency thesis say no. There is no minimal content the same in other communities regulated by law. Like Tamanaka, this strong contingency, we could say that law is whatever people identify and treat to their social practices as law. This is one opinion. Law is whatever people identify and treat through their social practices. So you don't have minimum content of law anymore. Now, I don't know, there are different attempts how to put these elements together. As I said, it starts with the conflict, but maybe there is no conflict, maybe. And for example, I know that Ken Kima also through his work is trying to say, no, there is no conflict here. You wrongly understand things, what conceptual analysis is for, what is conceptual analysis is about. So we could say, but this is important for the functions of law because we have to resolve this problem on our way with planning. Maybe also we could try with the image of the museum, because if you're talking about artifacts, where will you find artifacts? I think for me, immediately I have the image of the museum. I will go to the museum to find artifacts. And here you have some artifacts from Maritime Museum in Dubrovnik, which is a very nice place to go. It's in the fortress St. Ivan, and it has some unique artifacts there. So this is like mental experiment. We have to, when we're talking about the museum and museum, we have to find out what is the purpose of the museum. And you have to say something about classification of the artifacts in that museum, because you will not have museum if you don't have the system of classification of artifacts. So the first point is, what is the purpose of the museum? The purpose of our museum can be to expose legal systems to the public as, of course, intellectual artifacts. And physical artifacts basically serve to present it. You know, from Lucas lecturing that you have these intellectual and physical artifacts. So we're talking about legal system as intellectual artifacts, and we use in our museum the physical artifacts which present these different legal systems of the world. So to be more precise, we want to manifest different models of legal orders and to portray what distinguish these kind of social practices from other practices. So what is the legal practice when compared to moral practice or other practices? Okay, this is the basic, like about the purpose of the museum. We will add some other statements about the purpose, but obviously for this kind of avoiding conflict, you need to think about the purpose of the activity. What is the purpose of the activity? Then classification. You need classification for systematic division of artifacts and their storage in different units. Because in the museum you will have some artifacts on one shelf, and the other artifacts on another shelf. In the Maritime Museum, we will have these charts in the department of charts, or these objects in other departments. So you have to put different artifacts on different shelves. What this kind of exercise give to us? First, we can refer to the weak essentialism, because obviously in a museum we don't have to claim this is the real essence of the law, of the legal systems. We stipulate what is the essence of the law so that we could organize this museum. If we don't stipulate anything, we will not have a museum. We will not have classification, we will not have artifacts on the shelves. Of course, that artifacts can be organized in different ways, but it cannot be arbitrary decision. It depends on the purpose. It depends on the pragmatical goals that we have with this classification. And what is the goal of the classification? We have two sides or two requirements that have to be fulfilled. On the one side, it has to be encompassing enough. So your classification case or definitions have to be such that you encompass as much as possible of artifacts that might belong to your museum. So that if you have very specific definitions and classifications, you will miss some artifacts in your museum, and we don't want that to happen. On the other side, you have to be selective enough. Selective in comparison to other artifacts that are not law, and of course, selective enough for distinguishing different artifacts inside your museum so that you can put them on different shelves. What does this mental experiment also brings to us? It shows us the role of the theorists. Who is the person who organized the museum? Or are we going outside to the Café Sesam and ask them, we want a museum, please tell us how to classify artifacts there? Or experts will do that? Shall we, for our Museum of Law, use the opinion of legal theorists about the law? Is it smarter to use their opinion or to ask people in Sesam about classification of artifacts in the Museum of Law? I guess that if you are director of that museum, you will consult experts. And legal theorists are, of course, we guess that legal theorists are for something, that they are good in knowing what are the legal orders and what are the features of legal orders, and it would be good to pay them as director of the museum and use their knowledge for producing and organizing this museum. Now, what about analytical concept? This brings us to analytical concept. Everything that we say about museum in general refers also to our Museum of Law. We can use, as the theories who are employed for this museum, deductive methods and deductive methods. Doesn't matter. We have to find the best classification for our artifacts. We have to, because of the purpose, we are exploring all different legal orders. We have to look on the law as the translocal phenomenon, not as the local phenomenon, because we are not organizing the Museum of Croatian law, but we are organizing the Museum of Law. So it's translocal. Regarding the fault concept, of course, that the fault concept is also important for our museum. We can test our classification and whether we put all these artifacts correctly in our museum. Was our theory right? We can test. How? We could ask if you want ordinary citizens, or you can ask professionals. Do they agree with this kind of classification? So it can be tested if you want our classification to be tested. The aims can be then broadened. For example, the director of the museum could say, okay, but we want not only for our museum to make people better understand the law, but also we want them to be used in practice. what you find in the museum can be used in practice. This is our goal. And as director of the museum, you can put that the goal. Or you can say this museum is not only for ordinary citizens, but also for legal professions. So you could say this is only for legal professions museum. So at the end, what is the response to the contingency problem? Because now we are progressing with this idea of museum. If we are able with this idea to make it sustainable, then maybe we could resolve many problems mentioned before. But what about contingency problem? Maybe we could try to say, okay, this is how we organized our museum. This is the theory of law that we use for organization of our museum. And we are aware that artifacts are contingent. So you can test us through the scientific way of testing the theories. We can go in that way. So if you are claiming this is the classification of all legal orders, we could, as I said, ask for opinion test or assess the folk opinion about it. Do they agree about it? If this is the right way. So we can ask ordinary people or professionals about classification. And the second method, so for the contingency thesis, for us as the legal theorists, it is enough to make claims and to make these claims falsifiable. Falsifiability, Karl Popper again, is a possibility that what you're claiming is wrong. If your claim cannot be wrong, then Karl Popper would say, is it a science? We could discuss the idea of science, but here we could try to resolve the contingency problem with this entrance. So to say, let's test. Or my theory about law used in that museum can be tested, and this is enough. Someone else would have tested it. You can find a way how to test my thesis, but they are verifiable. They can be tested, and they can be wrong. And I admit that they can be wrong. Maybe they are right for this moment. Maybe they are wrong. They could be wrong in another moment. Another approach could be to use the historical approach to concepts. So if you could find historical data which reveals, for example, human nature, this could be useful to claim, but okay, these findings of historical scientists at Faculty of Law, we have a strong department of science history of law. So we are teaching our students about the history of law. So if you can find in all these data what they put to us, something that says about the nature of humans through the history, not that this is the nature of humans as essential as existing outside the society, but if you go to Babylon and before, you could find some development of humans and find some data which shows that they had a law, that they have some functions or something like that. So this historical approach to concepts can support your claim on your theory of law used in your museum. For example, also, people are talking today about UN system. I don't know what you think about UN system, but it seems it is a really in crisis. We have now Kabul in Afghanistan. Taliban has entered to Kabul. We will have lots of refugees coming to Europe. Summertime, nice, but we will have winter. So lots of problems could come to us. Strange things. 10 years ago, this would not be possible. Hundreds of thousands of US dollars were invested in the army. 65,000 people of Afghanistan died there. 6,000 of Americans and NATO, Croats and others died in Afghanistan now. Taliban are again there. And we will have the system of law in accordance to what Taliban thinks that law is. And this will reflect in refugees. So R2P doctrine, for example, which was very popular in 1990s, responsibility to protect people in 1990s think that there is a responsibility of states to react on these things. If there is an atrocity or massive or war crimes, Poland should react. Poland should send army to Croatia to save people in Dubrovnik. This was the thinking of people in 1990s. Who today thinks that some should intervene in Afghanistan? No, this was the wrong policy of USA because they intervened. This is the problem, because they intervene in Afghanistan, not because they withdraw from the Afghanistan. So things are changing in the international community, and those who are writing, international lawyers, for example, Ivan Šimonović, also is ambassador of Croatia to the United Nations, is writing also in his articles on the problems of international community. But UN system is not something that appeared from nothing. What is the historical data about that? What is the concept of UN, of the UN law, appears because there was another international legal system before, League of Nations. So you cannot start with explaining the things, what is happening now, no, exactly now, why do we have this concept? But you have to see the history. And of course, you have to see the history of states, because the concepts that we are using in international law are coming from the municipal states. This is why this approach of historical investigation of concepts can be useful, really, then to claim, for example, for going back to our museum. In history, you can find important data that supports our thesis that this is the right classification. And if someone thinks in society on some island that law is what they think the law is, that is their problem, because that does not correspond to what all others think that the law is. So this is the end of the second stage, and next year in Dubrovnik, I guess that we could be able to present the next two stages, classificatory stages, staging, and analytical stage. Thank you.